Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our Immigranted podcast powered by MDS Consulting. I am your host, Ms. Yadi Chimba. I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant with over 10 years of experience helping people from around the world make Canada their new home. And to all of you listening, our community, the MDS community, I want to say this. You are here because you are fighters. You've chosen to pursue your dream, your Canadian dream, no matter the obstacles. And that's what being a victor is all about. Today's episode is a powerful one because we are going to talk about something almost every immigrant faces at some point, okay? So which is a refusal from IRCC. You may have applied for a student permit, a work permit, a permanent resident, and you get that dreaded refused decision. But listen closely. This is not the end of the journey. It's just one more step to the path to victory. So I'm going to do my best to make the information as clear and easy to understand and helpful as possible. Okay? So let's get started. I don't really have lots of updates. I actually want to talk about what to expect for Express Entry in 2026. I know a lot of you have been asking me, do you think the CRS score is going to be that high? Do I have a chance to be able to receive an invitation to apply? So what is the outlook for Express Entry in 2026? So basically, if we look at the numbers and the 2025-2027 immigration level plans, it shows that the numbers of permanent residents that are going to be accepted in Canada are reducing. So they're reducing from 2025 to 2026, from 2026 to 2027. Okay? So my take on that, don't take my word for it, is it's just my experience. My take on that, because I've been studying, Express Entry since 2016. I've been working on PR applications since that time, and I've been able to see the trend, how it goes, how it moves, and all of that. So what I think is there's going to be a fewer overall ITA compared to this year, 2025. So the target's going to be aligned with the number of 2026. Okay, so I do believe that Express Entry will continue to contribute to a major portion of the economic class, but there's going to be a lot of competition on the CRS score. It doesn't look promising, right? But that's what I believe. And regarding the CRS cutoff, actually, what I believe is it's going to be more challenging in non-targeting draws. We've been able to see since this year, 2025, they've been doing a lot of targeted draws, so Canadian experience, the category base, all of that, right? But then for the category base, I believe that they're going to be priority in the Francophone stream. And it will be a little bit better for people that are under the category base. That's going to be better than the non-targeted draws. And if we are thinking about the category-based draws, we can expect to have more draws that's going to focus on specific sectors, such as the healthcare, STEM, education, and French, okay, rather than the general. So that's how IRCC is going to be able to control and to be able to align with the numbers of their plan. So basically, what it means for candidates or for clients, for people that want to apply under Express Entry, you need to focus on specialization. Okay. So what it means for clients or candidates under Express Entry is you need to focus on specialization. Okay, so you need to try to find yourself under a category based, so you have more chances to get an ITA under that than the general draw. I will say try to gain Canadian work experience if you can. Having a valid Canadian work experience will massively boost your score, so that helps. You can improve your language score. English, if you speak French, it's even better. French can either get you under the Francophone category if you have a CLB level 7, but if you are bilingual with CLB level 5, it also boosts your score. So that's great. I will say try to keep your profile up to date. So when I talk about profile up to date, that means if your language test is going to expire, try to keep it up to date, update your Express Entry profile. If you have any other jobs opportunity that change, try to do that. And then, the thing is we need to continue to monitor the trend for the CRS score and to see how it goes. Main topic. So we are going to talk about the refusals. I know specifically now with the atmosphere, the climate, with immigration, and the fact that they do want to meet their quota, a lot of you guys may have received that dreaded refuse decision. So let's try to dive in and deeply see why refusals happen. Okay, so let's begin with the big question. Why do refusals happen? So there is common reasons such as missing or incomplete documents. So you did not provide the documents that were requested for your application. If you apply for a visitor visa, for example, if you don't show ties to your home country, that is a very common reason for the officer to refuse it. If you did not provide financials that can convince the officer, that would be for the entry visa or for the student permit. So that could be also a reason for refusal. Regarding the work permit, if there is employer-related issues such as the LMIA, or you did not provide proof that you can perform the work that you are applying for, so that could be also a reason for the refusals. There is medical, criminal, misrepresentation grounds, another common reason. And then sometimes, it's just an officer decision. So maybe the information was not clear enough, and that would be a reason why an officer will just refuse your application. So the important things for us today, my victors, are pretty much to remember that a refusal doesn't always mean that you are ineligible. It doesn't mean that it's the end of your Canadian journey, okay? It often means pretty much that maybe your case was not presented correctly or not clear enough to the officer. Okay, so you just need to present it in the strongest way possible. All right, victors. So let's say you just received a refusal letter. What do you need to do? What to do after a refusal? So the first thing is don't panic. Okay, it does happen. Unfortunately, it does happen. And I just want to say we have clients that have been refused, not from us, but we have clients that have been refused maybe 2 or 3 times before they come to see us. And then after that, they get an approval. So being refused, again, it's not the end of your journey. It doesn't mean it's going to impact any subsequent applications. It just means that we just need to make sure that we present the strongest application. Okay? So a refusal, again, is not a permanent ban. It doesn't mean that you cannot come to Canada ever. The second thing I will say is try to order your GCMS notes. Try to order your GCMS notes. So we usually call it in our jargon, we call that the ATIP notes. So try to get your immigration file from the archives. Why? Because this is a very good way to get the insight of the officer. Usually an officer, when they work on your file, they have to put notes on how they come up with the decision. They usually will not put those notes on the refusal letter. Those refusal letters, I love to call them the eeny, meeny, miny, mo letters, because they have like different little case. They're gonna check whatever. And sometimes it doesn't even apply to your application. They just check, okay, this, no weak ties, or you have weak ties, or this and that. So eeny, meeny, miny, mo. It doesn't say anything really related to your application, so you don't really know why you've been refused. And since September of this year, because of those eeny, meeny, miny, mo letters, now immigration, they actually being forced by the federal court to provide the notes of the officer to each refusal. So if you've been refused before September, maybe you don't have those notes. But moving forward, since September, they are not, for each refusal that they send, they will provide the notes of the officer together. But it's pretty new. So we've been receiving notes that doesn't say anything. So for me, what I do, I still request the ATIP, so then I can compare and see if we get more insight. So why those notes are very important? Because it gives you insight of, and the real reason, most of the time, why your application has been refused. So the officer, for example, you apply for a visitor visa, and they send you that eeny, meeny, miny, mo letter, and they said, we don't believe that you're going to leave Canada. We don't believe that the purpose of your application is temporary residence, and that's it, okay? And they send you that for that reason, we refuse your application. So you don't really know why. Let's say you apply, you get your ATIP notes, and the note's going to say, well, the proof of funds that we received on the file doesn't really, I see a lump sum of money. I don't know where that lump sum of money is coming, so I don't really believe the funds are real. I don't really believe that the applicants have the funds to come to Canada. So now you know that the reason for the refusal is based on your proof of funds. And then maybe because you sold your car and you put a large sum of money into your bank account, now the officer is like, where's that money coming from? I have no explanation. I don't know, then I refuse, okay? So getting the notes of the officer can help you understand the refusal and help you now reapply and pinpoint the reason why you've been refusing. Like, okay, there is a lump sum of money in my account. That lump sum is tied to the fact that I sold my car, and then the proceeds of the car, that's the amount that I put in my bank account. And it's my personal money, I can use it, and I want to use it to fund my vacation in Canada, okay? So that you need to make it as clear as possible for the officer to be able to assess your application and to give a positive decision. So that's why getting the notes of the officer, it's very, very important when you've been refused. Don't try to reapply blindly, think that, oh, I've been refused, and I'm just going to reapply again, providing again the same documents and maybe writing your own explanation and trying to explain why you should be approved. You don't know why you've been refused, so you're not fixing anything. So try not to reapply blindly, get the notes, and then reapply when you know exactly what's the reason for the refusal. Okay, and then you can also, the last thing I would say when you receive the refusal is to reassess. What was missing? What could have been stronger? What is it that didn't work to convince the officer? Okay, and so if you reassess the application, see what's missing, what was like the thing that you can change, and in that, when I talk about reassessing, I will say try to get a professional advice, okay? Don't just reapply blindly. A lot of clients make that mistakes. They've been refused and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to reapply again, and maybe explain why I should be approved. That the officer they don't look at that. When they assess an application, they are by the book, they go with the law and the regulation, and they're gonna be looking at, do you meet those requirements? Were you able to convince me that you are going to be a temporary resident coming to Canada? Okay, and that I'm talking mostly for the temporary resident. For permanent resident, it's a little bit different. You just need to make sure that you meet the requirements and you did not forget any documents. All right, so my victors, learn from the setback, okay, and come back stronger. Now, we are going to move into how to overcome refusals. So you applied for your application for a temporary resident or permanent resident. You applied, you received a refusal, you don't panic, you try to understand, to reassess, you get professional advice to see how, what that is the next step to do after the refusal, how you can reapply, and now how do you overcome it? How are you able to change that refusal into a successful positive decision? So let's get into the strategies, okay? Because for me, when you are victors, that means you have a plan. And when you have a plan, you're going to be able to achieve that plan and to change it to a positive decision. So to reapply stronger, you need to make sure that if there were any missing documents, add them to the application. Rewrite your statement to maybe look at whatever was missing that was not clear, that was not really explaining the reason of your application. You can do that as well. And mostly if you receive the notes of the officer, address the officer concerns. That's the first step, because the officer actually refused your application because they're concerned. You have not convinced them that you are going to respect the conditions of your stay in Canada. So address the concerns right away. Make sure that you provide a stronger application. Now, you can also switch strategies. For example, maybe the pathway that you were considering is not working, and maybe you should try to consider another strategy, another program. Maybe that's something that's going to be more adapt to your situation. Switch strategies. So maybe the pathway that you were considering, the pathway that you applied for is not working. So maybe it should be better, it would work for you to consider changing the strategy, changing the pathway that would work better to what you want to do in Canada. Okay, so that might be maybe choosing another program. So that might be another idea to switch strategy, and that will help you overcome the refusal. The other thing that I will talk about will be pretty much submission letters. It's very important. Usually when you work with a professional, they will provide the submission letters. My submission letter usually resume everything that the reason why we are applying, the legal sections of the law, why that should apply to that application, explaining also background facts about the client. So I'm trying to make it easier for the officer when they receive the application. They have in one on the cover letter, they have pretty much all the points. They have the background of the application, the background fact. They know who is the client, why they're applying for, what type of section apply to their application. So you make it easier. So then after that, the officers it's clear for them, and they can give a decision faster, first of all, and then a successful decision. Okay, so submission letters matters. Explain, clarify everything that you can on the submission letter. Employer correction. So if it's LMIA related, if there is any issue with the recruitment, or if there's anything regarding compliance, if there's anything regarding the performance of the work, all of that, you can look into that and you can try to fix it. And then the last resort, I will say, to overcome refusal, once you've get the help of a professional also, and you're still getting a refusal, will be maybe to look at judicial review. Because pretty much for the temporary residence, you cannot appeal the decision, you can go to judicial review. And if the reason for the refusal is really unreasonable, right, and you tried everything, you are convinced you presented a very strong file and all the facts, everything is there, and you're still getting a refusal, the judicial review is actually a good path. My victors, I want to tell you, for example, a real story for a case of temporary residence for work permit, for example, how to overcome a refusal and how we did it for our clients. So we applied for the employer, wanted to hire foreign workers outside of Canada under an LMIA work permit. And it was 3 workers under that same employer. We applied, we sent all the application, all the forms, everything was good. We presented a very strong application, and then we came back with recently again a refusal. So I was very surprised, because why would it be refused? I'm pretty sure we followed all the steps that I talked about and share with you guys. And so we get on the notes of the officer, where the officer believed that the employer is not a genuine employer. They don't believe that the business actually is a viable and legit business. And I received that refusal, and I'm thinking, what are you talking about? They have an LMIA. If they have an LMIA, so that means Service Canada actually vetted the business. They have to check that to make sure that the business is viable, it's a legit business, registered, they have financials, and they can actually hire the foreign workers. They're actually doing a labor market impact assessment. So we have a valid positive decision with the LMIA, we have contract, we have proof that the workers can perform the job. Why are you refusing? Because you don't believe the employer is a real employer. So the notes were not very clear, so I decided to go and ask for the ATIP. We get that, and what we realized is on the notes of the officer, the real ATIP, not the notes that they sent with the refusal letters, they actually put a little bit more information on the ATIP. So what they said is, well, the employer's address is different on the LMIA decision, and when we go on their website, the address is different. So we don't believe it's a real business. Really? That's ridiculous. Anyway, because they did refuse it because of that, we have to apply for reconsideration. So we did apply for reconsideration. I reached out to the employer and I asked them, okay, why do you have different address? One on your website and the other one on the LMIA. And they had a very valid reason for that, okay? So the one on the website is pretty much the one that they are using. That's where the office is. And the other one on LMIA is the one that the employer is keeping personally, because that's where they send financials from CRA directly to them. So for privacy purposes, he wants to be sent to that address so it doesn't go to his office address. Very simple reason. So in my reconsideration letter, I asked the employer to provide me proof of that, like for example, proof of the accountant, and then from CRA with that address, and then also the business license with the new address, the address that they have on the website. I explained everything, submitted a reconsideration letter explaining how ridiculous well, not on terms as ridiculous, but I explained how, it was surprising to come up to a decision of a refusal that the employer is not a real employer and the business is not legit when they previously been vetted by Service Canada. We provided valid positive decision letter with an LMIA, and then the reason why there's a discrepancies with the address, that's why we get the three work permits approved. But that is just to show you that a refusal doesn't mean the end of the world. You really need to understand why. And then also because the officers are very by the book, very square. And also, if you've been following us, my victors, you know that they are using AI. And then the AI it's not a real person, right? It's a computer. So they have very specific algorithm to be able to refuse a decision, to refuse an application. So based on that, then we have to pay more attention, even more now, and then we don't need to take a no for an answer. And that's why we're victors. All right, so thank you, Victor. So now let's go to our Q&A.
If my PR application is refused, can I appeal or apply again?
Okay, so if your permanent residence application is refused, you need to see why it's been refused first, right? And then based on the refusal, you cannot appeal for the permanent residence, but you can actually either ask for reconsideration, so you can submit a web form and send it to the program manager, explaining the reason why you believe the officer made a mistake, or you can just, depending on what type of PR application you're applying for, again, so I was talking about economic stream, right? So if it's under express entry or any economic streams, you can either go back into the pool and submit again, or if it's BCPNP, you can see if your certificate is still valid, you can submit again. If it's spousal sponsorship, that depends. If you can actually appeal that decision, depending if you are inside, outside of Canada, there is a specific processing time for that, but that would be the difference.
What are the most common reasons PR applications get refused?
Okay, very good questions. The reason, so I do make a difference between refusal and application being cancelled. Okay, it's two different things. I know a lot of clients come to us and they said, my application has been refused and I need to reapply. They refuse it because I did not provide the correct police certificate. It's not refused, it's cancelled. They just don't process the application. They send it back. They put you back. They don't put you back into the pool. You have to recreate your express entry profile again. But your application has not been refused. It's been cancelled because it was incomplete. So most of the reason why PR applications are cancelled is because missing documents, police certificate is not the correct police certificate, or you're missing a reference letter, for example, or the passport is expiring. So there is different reason as to when you submit a PR application, it has to be complete for processing. If it's not complete, it's not moving to the next step, which is the processing, they cancel the application. Now, an application, the PR application that's been refused, it will be based on the law and regulation, IRPA, and IRPA regulations. So what they're going to be looking at, so for example, let's say, especially when I'm talking about permanent residency right now, I'm going to talk mostly about express entry, okay, the economical streams. So if they're going to refuse your application, let's say you did not provide enough proof regarding your work experience. So what the officer is going to do, remember express entry is a point system, they're going to remove the work experience that you claim. So if they remove your work experience, so that will result in your CRS score to drop. If your CRS score is actually below the bracket you've been invited under, that will result in a refusal because you should have never get invited. Okay? So the work experience, everything that you claim, you have to prove it. And if you cannot claim it, that will result on removal of your points, drop of your points, and that will definitely warrant a refusal. The other reason for refusal will be criminality. If you have a criminal background, if your police certificate show that you have criminal issues, right? Then that would be a reason for criminality, reason for them to refuse the PR application. You can still overcome that, but that might be one of the common reasons for refusal. Medical inadmissibility, if you have any issues, any health issues that's going to cost way more to Canada, that's going to be a burden for Canadians or permanent residents, that is also a reason for refusal. So That's basically a common reason for refusal.
Will a refusal affect my future immigration applications to Canada?
No, if you listen to our podcast today, it's not the end of the world. So being refused doesn't mean it's the end of your journey. You can always reapply. Make sure you reapply not blindly, but with knowledge and stronger.
Do visa refusals like my past tourist visa got refused, will it show up in my immigration record when I apply for my PR application?
Yeah, anything that you provide to immigration, when you apply to Immigration Canada, you have what they call the UCI, which is a unique client ID. And everything that you provide to immigration, any of your files will be stored under that ID. That is a unique client ID, and they have all information. Yes, it's going to show that you've been applying before, but is it going to impact negatively your PR application? No. Okay? Is it going to impact negatively any temporary residence that you're going to do after? It may not. Hi, Messia, I'm Karina, and I follow you on all socials and watch all of your videos. Thank you, Karina. That's very nice. They are very informative, especially for us struggling to get better scores for the CRS scores. Yeah, I feel the pain. Believe me. So, I just have a $1 million question, okay? In my GCK profile, I separate my accounting position and service officer positions. Here it is below. So, for those that are listening and not watching the podcast, Karina actually sent a little screenshot of her work history, and we have the position of first accounting assistant and then after a service officer position. Then she said, this is my certificate of employment. It's just one document. Here is below. So we have the certificate of employment. The certificate of employment just indicates Karina's name, and also that she's been employed with the employer from 2009 to 2021. At the time of her separation, she was holding the position of service officer / junior assistant manager. And then they signed it. So the question is, because my 12.3 years of work experience is composed of 11.7 years as accounting and 6 months as service officer. My question is, if I apply in the future, what should I do? Should I submit the same COE for both my accounting and service officer position? Thank you, and I hope you answered this very specific question. Thank you, Karina. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to answer your question. The first thing I see on your work history is you have separated accounting assistant, different NOC, and then service officer, different NOC. Then you provide certificate of employment. The certificate of employment shows that you've been working from a certain period, so from 2009 up to 2021 with your employer. And they provided two positions, that saying that you've been holding the position as service officer, then after that, junior assistant manager. Quick note. They say junior assistant manager. On your work history, you put accounting assistant. So you have to try to be consistent. Either you were a junior assistant manager or accounting assistant. So either you change that on the reference letter, or you're going to have to change that on your work history. Try to stay consistent on that. Now, the question is, can I use the same, can I use that letter for the two positions? Yes. However, you're going to have to, the letter is going to have to be drafted separately. So what I would advise you to do and to have on your work reference letter or your certificate of employment is to have your employer mentions that you've been working from the 6 months period as a service officer, so from that period to that period as a service officer, and then list all of your duties. So that's where she was doing. She was a service officer, and that were her duties. She was doing this, step A, B, C, D, and then you can also indicate that you were getting that wage or the salary for that period. Then they have to put on the same letter. They said then she's being promoted to junior assistant manager, and during that position, that was her duties. So they need to list all of the duties that you are doing as a junior assistant manager. That's very important because there are two different positions, two different duties, two different NOC. So you need to make sure that if you want to use only one letter, then that letter is as complete as possible. First of all, indicating your duties as a service officer, and also after that, indicating your duties as junior assistant manager. In that case, you can use the same certificate of employment. Otherwise, you need to provide two different certificates of employment for the two different positions. make sure you list the duties, because that's how the officer is going to be able to assess if you actually meet the requirement of the position that you're claiming for. Okay? I hope it helps. So, do you want your message to be featured on the next episode? Then you know what you do. You need to send us all of your thoughts on any of our social media platform, even WhatsApp. You can do that. So at MDS Consulting, we've helped countless clients move from refusal to approval, and we can help you too. So if you're ready to turn your setback into a comeback, visit us at mdsconsulting.ca, book a consultation, and let's build our victory together. And to my community of victors, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to the Immigranted podcast so you never miss an episode. And then share this with a friend that actually needs an encouragement today. Because remember, victors, we don't give up, we just rise.